very good piece called "The Death of Hollywood." So my good friend Bertrand Cooper, I don't know if you're familiar with Bertrand Cooper. He writes for the Times and the Atlantic.
Oh, yeah.
Comes on the show a lot. We were
Yeah.
talking about this hip hop beef and your article
Nice.
because there are some through lines there. But I hate to sound here. I'll read this intro I have for Daniel Bessner. I hate to sound like an old man yelling at clouds, but has the quality of films diminished in this current moment? If you had to choose between watching the top grossing films of, say, 1995 or 2024, which ones would you be more excited to watch? Were big studios more willing to take bigger risks on experimental and arty films more than they are now? Are sitcoms and television shows suffering the same fate? You ever wonder why every show seems like The Office? Does originality die when trying to meet the quarterly numbers for investors? From his article in Harper's, The Life and Death of Hollywood, the film and TV industry is now controlled by only 4 major companies, and it is shot through with incentives to devalue the actual production of film and television. What is to be done? The most direct solution would be government intervention. If it wanted to, a presidential administration could enforce an existing antitrust law, break up the conglomerates, and begin to pull entertainment companies loose from asset management firms. It could regulate the use of financial tools, as D. Ward has suggested. It could rein in private equity. The government could also increase competition directly by funding more public film and television. It could establish universal basic income for artists and writers. None of this is likely to happen. The entertainment and finance industries spend enormous sums lobbying both parties to maintain deregulation and prioritize the private sector. Again, that's an excerpt from Daniel Bessner's latest piece in Harper's The Life and Death of Hollywood. Wherever you are watching or listening to this show, there are links in the description. You were recently living in LA. The last time I saw you, been over a year ago. You were still in Hollywood.
I was on sabbatical there, yeah.
I found this quote from Vulture magazine, and I think you posted this article last year. This is the single worst time to be. This is from June of 2023. This is the single worst time to be making anything in the history of the medium. It's just as dark as it's ever been. It's such a fucking disaster, isn't it? It's like the entire system is snapped. These companies took what was an extraordinary successful economic model and they destroyed it in favor of a model that may or may not work, but almost certainly won't work as well as the old model. Everything became big tech, the Amazon model of we don't actually have to make money, we just have to show shareholder growth. Is this the sentiment that's running through Hollywood right now with the creative people that you spoke with?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's happened is that high finance has shaped Hollywood in a very strong way in the last 15, 16 years. And I think for this show, what's really interesting about it is it really does relate to these crises of capitalism that Marx predicted and talked about, which was that basically over time there would be less fruitful places for capital to invest. So, for example, think about all the places capital could go when you were building 19th century railroads. Or when you're literally constructing gigantic American cities in the 20th century. You're building LA, you're building other things out. And there's just a lot of profitable places for investment. But over time, there's less and less profitable places to invest, and particularly since the 1970s and deindustrialization, where there's not even really profitable businesses for large numbers of capital to capitalists and for capital to invest in. So over time, the reality of this falling rate of profit, I think, has led capital into industries that aren't especially good in terms of high returns. Journalism is one and Hollywood is the other. Of course, capital did flock to tech. But I think basically tech was exhausted, and I mean, you could see it's difficult to know, like, to what degree is Facebook really valuable or just selling basic in effect nonsense and no one actually clicks on these ads, but let's just say it is valuable.
Mhm.
Facebook was founded around 20 years ago. I think 20 years I think
Wow.
exactly 20 years ago in 2004. So there's just not that many places for money to go, so it goes into business that it historically wasn't as much a part of high finance because there's nowhere else for it to go. First, it went into journalism and effectively destroyed the journalist profession, journalism
Yeah.
as a profession, and it went into Hollywood, which isn't an especially great business. It might be a fun business, but it's not a business that's going to get you a return, like, for example, investing in U.S. Steel in 1900 or whatever, proto U.S. Steel was back then. I don't know if it was actually called that back then, or investing in Facebook in 2005. So in these not so profitable businesses, it has to basically lower costs, find places to cut costs, and oftentimes that comes with labor. So it's just the after effects of this long downturn in capitalism, which Marx predicted would happen in the middle of the 19th century, and which really took off in this country in the 70s.